Knox Country
Podcast Edition.
I've always been around great songwriters and artists my whole life. I'm Michael Knox. Welcome to my world.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jason Aldean, and you are listening to my boy Michael Knox on Knox Country
Podcast.
Welcome to the Knox Country Syndicated Radio Show podcast. This week, I have a very old friend of mine, Mr. Shane Miner.
Yeah.
I met you a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yes. We won't date anything because you still look like you're in your 20s.
Well, so do you, Michael.
And I don't.
Yeah, you do.
Somebody's lying.
Yes. But when I first met you, you were an artist on MCA. Is that correct?
Mercury. Part of MCA.
Yeah. And you were coming around listening for songs. And who was producing your project then?
Dan Huff.
Yeah, that's right. But now was that one of his earlier?
I was actually the first record he'd produced by himself.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because I think before that he had worked on Chris Ward. Remember that guy? I think Chris Ward was on Giant, and I think Dan and James had produced Chris's record.
I had done one artist project in the early 90s, recorded some stuff on my brother, and I hired Dan to be a guitar player.
Yeah.
And his cartage guy came in, and we were all in awe of Dan. Like, that was Dan Huff.
Right.
He's one of the greatest guitar players. But his cartage guy had to set up his cartage and then had 2 bottled waters and a napkin folded. And I remember going in there talking to the cartage guy going, "So man, what's that?" And he goes, "Yeah, but we have to put this bottle of water here and a napkin, it's part of his cartage." And we were all like, "That's big time. You're big time when the cartage guy got to bring you a bottle of water."
Oh my gosh.
What was a napkin for?
Probably to wipe his mouth after he drank the bottle of water. I don't know, but it was awesome.
I'm not doing that for you.
Yes.
I'm not. I draw the line. No.
But you do that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, pretty much.
No, but I was a monster Dan Huff fan, and now he's monster producer.
Right.
So
yeah,
But that was his first full record. Just
that. Yeah, my record was the first full record that he had produced by himself, and then from there, I guess my record at the time was more about probably Dan's production instead of me being an artist.
Yeah.
Because and I get that. And because with my record, it was a little different sounding at the time, and definitely not down the road. Definitely not the road I wanted to go down, but. From that record, he started getting all kinds of other stuff. People would call him and go, "Hey, that Shane record you did, I love that sound." And then it was Shadazy, it was Lone Star. Lone Star was kind of on the fringe of going away, and then then Dan, they found that Amaze song and he blew up. So
they're welcome.
Was that you? Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, me, right? You're welcome. So it's all me.
Yeah, it's
all me.
Yeah,
Dan should be thanking me right
exactly.
now. Let's call him up.
I agree with that.
I really see now why you guys are friends. I mean,
we're total friends. I love Knox.
So, but back then, when you first came to town, you're coming from California.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't associate country music with California. But you were rodeo. You were a rodeo guy. You were a police officer.
Right.
Was country music a big deal when you were growing up in California?
Huge. I mean, you look at the Bakersfield sound. I mean, I grew up on that. Buck Owens, Merle Haggard, they're all from that area. Dwight.
So how did that happen? How did you get a deal out of California coming to Nashville then?
Well, how I got the deal was I had met a manager. His name was Bud Prager, and he had managed Foreigner and a bunch of big rock bands, 38 Special from day one. And I'd met him. He started managing me, and he had happened to manage Giant, which was Dan Huff's band. And so that's how I got acquainted with Dan. And when Dan moved to Nashville, I just kept playing stuff around L.A., San Dimas, Bakersfield. I kept playing honky tonks and writing with everybody I could. And every time I'd get in a writing room, they'd always say, "Man, you're too country for L.A." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but I really have nobody there. I know, I guess I could just go out there and do it like everybody else," which I was thinking about, but I had a career going too as a cop, which is a whole other story. And I was, took the police officer job with LAPD to live financially in LA so I could do music. And what happened was I was doing a show, right? It was in San Dimas at the Western Connection. I don't know if it's still there. And I'd met James Stroud. And James, I guess, was pretty big at the time here in Nashville, and James and I are still friends today. And he walked up, typical James, cigar, James Stroud, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, right, because I didn't know what he looked like. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, right, you're James Stroud. And this guy goes, no, that's really James Stroud. I'm like, get out of here, right? So me and James start talking, and I come to Nashville and do a couple demo things for him. And he's like, yeah, man, he goes, just keep seasoning yourself, which he was right. And went back to L.A., kept writing him. James and I stayed in contact, and Dan and I stayed in contact. And pretty soon it got to the place where songwriting was starting, because I loved to write songs, started writing them at 12. And it started kicking in to where it made sense. My songs started making sense. I started getting a grasp on it. And sometimes I still feel like I'm a student of it still. Next thing I know, James is like, I go to Nashville, and James is like, yeah, you're ready. And the next thing I hear is, you need to quit your job. And I was like, well, that's a risk, and I always heard, my dad was an old cowboy, and he always said, man, no risk. Without risk, there's no reward. You can go either way, and, it is what it is. Just go do it. If that's what you want to do what makes you happy. And so I just went out on the edge and came to Nashville, and I kind of already had a publisher set up with EMI. And 2 weeks later, it sounds like I got here and 2 weeks later I had a record deal, but I'd been talking to Stroud and those guys for a year or so, coming back and forth, and it just happened. I got that deal at Mercury. They'd heard a demo of a song that I'd written, and Luke Lewis was running Mercury at the time.
Yeah.
And Keith Stegall was his A&R guy who produced Alan Jackson and everybody.
But how did that work with James? Because was James a producer on your first album?
No, James. Here's what happened. Here, this is a testament to James at the time. He was running Giant, but I think Giant was getting to where it was closing its doors.
Yeah.
And you remember those times.
Yeah.
And I went over to Masterphonics, and I told James, I go, man, I got a meeting with Luke Lewis and Keith Stegall. Do it. So I went over there. They signed me on the spot. Why, I don't know, because I still don't think I was ready, but they did. And so James and Dan called James, said, hey, man, Shane got signed. So Mercury Records, they started talking to me, and they go, hey, you could have James do this and work and produce this record. Well, Dan and I had been working so long together, and Dan had cut some corners for me and really helped me along and stepped up where he didn't really have to help me,
Yeah.
And he did.
And he hadn't really jumped in the production world yet.
No, he'd just done that one record with James. And I felt like, I don't want to come back on me, because I don't think somebody was trying to weed Dan out at the time. That's not right. It just felt like they wanted somebody with some experience. Right, with James. And I wanted James too. And I also wanted Dan, because he's kind of the one that brought me to the dance. And he hung in there with me in all those years when, James and I would talk on the phone, but Dan was the guy going, do this. You're not doing this right. Saying, as a producer, you're a great producer. When you get an artist that's been singing live in bars his whole life, and he steps underneath these headphones and these cans, it's a complete different world, right?
Yeah, it takes some time.
And that's what Dan went through with me.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, and he was real hard on me. And it's like, when it came that time, I just felt like Dan needed the shot. Well,
how much did your sound change from originally to where the first album ended out?
Completely different.
Yeah, because your first record was like the beginning of the Rascal Flatts,
right?
The pop kind of sound coming in, those harmonies, really tight stuff, really kind of poppy, slick kind of things. Because your first record sounded great, but I knew you came in my office hanging out wearing jeans, t-shirts. And then your first video came out, and you were in leather,
right?
And you look good in leather, But
I'm not touching that one. I'm not touching that one.
But it was a different change for that. So, but that did start a lot of another direction that happened in Nashville.
It did. Keith Urban one time said, "Man, thank God that you came in before I did." Kind of opened the door, which I'm not. Keith Urban's a talented guy, and he's responsible for his success. But I guess somebody's got to be the guinea pig, and I guess I was the guy. But
now, "Ordinary Love" was the song that I remembered making the impact, but that wasn't your first single.
No,
correct?
My first single was "Slave to the Habit." I didn't even want to cut it.
Yeah.
But
"Ordinary Love" what kind of felt like you a little bit. Your writing style.
It did. I didn't write that song.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's what I was fixing
right,
to get to.
Yeah, because I love that song. The song that I had that they wouldn't let me cut, this will blow your mind. I've never told you the story. so everybody gets to hear it on here. I walked into with a tape cassette of "She Had a Barbecue Stain on My White T-Shirt," and she was, that ain't a hit. You can't cut that. I had that song.
And then Tim McGraw did it for about 9 weeks, number one.
Well, yeah, what was it? 9 weeks, number one.
Yeah.
So times were different, back then. But anyways, and back to Dan, I finally got put in the corner with Dan, and I said, you know what, Dan? I went into Luke, and I said, is it okay if I just use Dan on this? Like, give him a chance to do a couple sides on me? Because I explained to Luke, I go, these guys brought me the dance. Him and I worked hard, and I think he deserves a shot. And Luke says, yeah, you got it. But you're going to have to tell James. And I called James Stroud up, and I said, James, look, I want to work with you. It's huge at the time. I go, and it's an honor. And people would think I'm crazy. I said, but take this just out of being, having a sense of ethics for my friend. He got me there, and I just, and James say no more. He goes, I've never had an artist do that. And he goes, I appreciate loyalty in an artist. And he goes, absolutely. And James and I are still friends to this day. He gave me his blessing, and fortunately for Dan, it worked out, and I had a great run too. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Well, and during that time, man, James was producing so much. I believe he did. I could be wrong. I'll get a phone call from him or something, but 26 records in 1 year.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
Right.
The most I've ever done was 6, and I went crazy.
Yeah.
So
I know.
He was killing it. Doing those when he was over at Giant, and
right.
But I can name half the 90s as James Stroud.
Oh, totally. And I'll forever be indebted to James. I love James, and maybe I probably should have had him produce my record.
but now Ordinary Love was the one that kind of started getting some traction, getting some legs. But you went out with Shania Twain.
Yeah, that's why the leather.
Yeah.
I think Luke Lewis in his mind was he had Shania working, and he wanted to mail Shania.
Well, we were always told that when you came by to listen for songs.
See, I didn't know that.
A&R always said, think of him as a male Shania. And that's why they always sent you to me, because I was the only guy.
Because you're the other one wearing leather.
Right. But mine was leather shorts. It was different.
Well, it didn't work. Did you show your midriff?
I didn't.
That's where it went wrong.
I didn't. That's where we went. But like
wrong.
Mike does.
Exactly.
Like he's wearing right now.
That's exactly right.
If people could only see him right now. He's
With
got his white
chaps and everything.
He totally has his chaps on.
Tank top midriff is different.
Hey everybody, this is Shane Miner, and you're listening to Knox Country
Podcast.
But with that Shania tour,
right?
That was. She was Shania then. She was taking
awesome.
off. Everything was huge for her.
She was awesome.
You were playing in front of huge crowds.
Oh man!
So you went from Rodeo to an officer. LAPD all the way, and now boom, all of a sudden you're in these monster stadiums opening for Shania Twain.
Totally not ready for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for it. That's the truth, Michael. You know that. You work with artists. When you worked with Jason, didn't you? You found Jason when?
Yeah.
Way back, right?
Yeah.
And I guarantee
he was 21 years old.
There you go. And I guarantee you, I swear I don't know the story. I'm looking at you right now. I would say that you probably worked with Jason for years over the phone, going to see him and getting him seasoned and woodshedding with him.
No,
Am I close?
He got a record deal his first 3 months in Nashville, and then we lost it because
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Capitol signed him, and we sat over there for 2 years because nobody could identify what we were doing yet. Including Jason. Jason was growing every day, hat off, hat on.
Wow.
Do I dress this way or this way?
Sure.
It just takes time, man. When you get here and you see the bar, you see the people you're really competing with. Because it's different than playing in the clubs. And then all of a sudden you walk in here and you see all these guys walking around Music Row.
Right.
And you're like, oh man, the bar has been lifted. But you were ready. You were there. Everything was happening. It just just maybe didn't happen. That's all.
Well, I don't know if I was ready. I didn't have the people around me that were song guys. I didn't have a team.
Yeah.
It was really me and Dan.
Yeah.
Because at the time, the A&R guys at Mercury, they were all writers, and Keith was still producing Alan Jackson, and they had other interests. So I get that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't have a team of people going, hey man, you got a deal? Let's give it 6-8 months. Let's woodshed a little bit. Let's get this right and get these songs right. Because even I didn't know why I didn't like the songs. I just knew there's half of that record. I'm like, I wouldn't freaking buy that. But I was kind of being told this is what you got to do. And I was so green. See, that's where I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
That's where I wasn't ready.
And no offense, it took me a couple of albums to get ready myself as a producer.
Okay, I
with
get
Jason.
it.
So
that.
Dan probably was learning too.
He was. I'm sure he was.
And that's the cool thing about country music is that they give you that opportunity to develop and grow. But the great thing about country music is you found another life after your artist career.
Right.
Where you didn't get to cut the songs you might have wanted to cut as an artist, but everybody wanted to cut songs you were writing as Shane Minor.
Right.
How did that transition happen from being the artist to the songwriter, and what was the time period?
Oh man. Well, when I got dropped from Mercury Records, it was in 2001, I think.
How long did that process go? The album?
That was about 2.5 years. Yeah.
2.5 years, and you were on tour with Shania. I mean, that's throwing you.
Threw me right to the wolves. And I'm telling you, I wasn't ready.
Yeah, but I saw you play with Shania.
You did?
And you did good.
I didn't think I ever did.
Yeah, no, I saw you there. I saw you at a show because they flew everybody out one time. I think there was somebody else on y'all's tour, wasn't there?
Let me think. It was me. And there was what's the dance group from Leahy?
Yeah. All I remember is that we went to see, it wasn't here in town, it was a drive somewhere. You got to remember, man, this is 20 years ago.
Right.
But it was a drive somewhere, and I remember seeing you perform, and I talked to you that night. I mean, it was a good show. Everything was fine. It just, sometimes things just don't happen, and a lot of that might be the believability in it, because you were saying, man, I wasn't enjoying these songs as much as I wished I could have.
Right. Well, see, they had me on that record label on the album cover and in the videos in the leather, which is totally not me.
Yeah.
And then I would go to shows and I'd be dressed like I am now in jeans.
But dude, I would hang with you, man, and you were the coolest guy.
Well, thanks, man.
I knew back then.
Well,
I mean,
me
it was
too.
awesome hearing your story from Rodeo all the way to the LAPD, and I know you were around during the riots, and then you moved into the country music world, and then you moved here. And then you and David Lee Murphy, later in life hooked up and started writing as well. And, but you got to be proud of that transition, because now you have a career in something completely different than what you started out as.
That's true.
Right. And that's the whole process of our town that allows that to happen. That you might not get that opportunity if you were in pop or some other format.
That's true. That is right. Coming from LA, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So you had 2.5 years, you had the label, you moved on. Beautiful Mess. Right. Was that your first
number one?
First number one?
Yep.
So what was your first cut?
Oh, God, what was my first cut? I can't remember, Mike. There was something before Beautiful Mess.
Did you write anything on your own album?
Yeah, I wrote Change Your Mind and A Girl Like That, which I kind of liked A Girl Like That, but, I was just hard on my songs. I mean, I didn't have the experience like you. You're a great song guy. And I just knew all I would judge it by is like if I put it in the car radio and I started listening to the speakers or whatever, and I wanted to hear it, and the songs you just want to hear again and again, like, wow, I find myself singing them. That's how I would judge a song, because I didn't have the knowledge. I just I would buy that.
Yeah.
Well, most of my record I didn't do that with. Even most of my own songs even when they made me cut, I was like, eh.
But that's the trick.
That's the trick.
Mm-hmm. People think that there is an actual formula or an analyzation of it.
Right.
And it's really staying a fan.
Right.
Of what you're doing.
That's exactly right.
And then you go, man, I like that. It's really, I hate to tell you, everybody compliments me on songs, and all they're doing is complimenting me on what I would buy. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, but
I
the
100%
trick,
get that.
Okay, the trick to me, though, is hearing a song and it's a hit and you love the song, but being able to distinguish whether or not that song is great for this artist you're listening for, because that's the trick. Just because it's a great song doesn't mean it's going to be great for that artist.
That's true.
And maybe that's, you were like, I love this song.
Right.
Or they loved this song and it just wasn't,
right.
For you, but you still had good ears.
Right. I could hear a song. Mm-hmm. Right.
But that's the plan B of Nashville. That's the A&R side of Nashville, where if you don't have a good A&R guy, you can get taken down the wrong path. If you have a great A&R guy, you can be taken down a good path.
Right.
And you can, so that's the neat thing about Nashville that you might not have in other formats,
right,
because they hire a different process of how to develop a talent.
Right.
They hire a track guy or producer guy,
right,
and then those guys write. So they're really just going there for that one element.
Sure,
You
I
know,
get
where
that.
in Nashville, you walk in and you got this whole massive song pool pitching to artists, you
Sure.
know. I mean, but that happens a lot, you know, but you still had a huge experience that elevated you into going, hey, man, I can do this.
Sure.
I know I can do this.
Right.
So a Beautiful Mess.
That was a huge song.
Oh, Diamond Rio?
I bought the Diamond Rio album because of that song.
Oh.
And I was young. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
but I loved that song.
But that
thank you.
sounded like you coming off your album. When you hear Beautiful Mess,
Well, that was me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I started working with Joe Galani, who I loved. Right when I came off of Mercury, Joe was going to sign me over to RCA. He had me I was on a development deal, and again, I went in and talked to Joe, and I was like, I still don't think I'm ready.
yeah.
And I'd had that song, and that's how he'd heard Beautiful Mess, and Diamond Rio was on that label. And what if we let Diamond Rio cut it? And of course, I'm going, yeah, absolutely. And so the rest is history, and that really got the ball rolling for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I love going out on the road. I love to sing. I love to be up there with other artists and my buddies. I miss that part of it, but I don't. I enjoy being home with my wife and kids, and you know, going to the mailbox and getting a little check every now and then, and being able to hang out. You know what I mean?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months,
That's when you make it to the mailbox.
right? And I never. I mean this. I've never done music to be rich. I never did.
Well, and people say that a lot, and they think they're all full of crap. But
I
it's an
promise
actual, genuine thing. The guys that are really, really successful would do it anyway.
I do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm not rich. I'm not. Most of the stuff I have, I bought with artist money because I saved. I was
Yeah.
a single dad, you know, and it's me and my son, and I saved. We lived in a barn where every time it would rain, the rain would come down the walls. That barn's still there. And I saved every penny I had, and when I found a little bit of property, I paid it off the day of closing. And
Okay.
it was, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I've lived like that, try to be debt free, and I've just, you know, I'm not a rich guy, but I'm a blessed guy, and I'm content.
Yeah.
You know?
But the great thing about Nashville is that you can have that one pop-up
Yes.
thing every now and then,
You can.
and it just gives you a 25, 30-year career.
That's true.
You know,
That's true.
and let's fast forward now to Cole Swindell,
Yeah.
Chillin It.
Yeah.
That's his first. That's what put him on the map.
Right.
And that thing I heard everywhere.
I know.
When it came out, it was played so slow, so long. I mean, it broke him. It gave him a career.
That's
You know,
right.
how did that whole? Were you part of the production team as well on that one?
No, what happened is when Cole and I wrote that song, he said, "Man, we need to pitch this to Luke," because Cole wrote for Luke. And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to go demo it or something?" We got talking. He goes, "What if we just have Jody build a track, Jody Stevens?" And I go, "Yeah, do that." So we sent Jody the work tape. A couple days later, he goes, "Hey man, I think I got this track." Me and Cole went over there. Cole sang it. I threw some harmony on it as a demo, and Jody mixed it, and that's our demo. That was the
Yeah.
record. That's me singing harmony.
Really?
That's our demo. Yeah, that's a
That's
demo.
awesome.
But that's how that happened.
That's how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cole and Luke wanted to cut it. It was a great story. Luke wanted to cut that song, and then Cole wanted to get an artist deal. And me being an artist, I understood where Cole was at. Going, man, I need this song. And I understand as an artist, when you need a song and you believe in something, it's like I didn't want to be that guy going, "No, that song ain't. You know, and I'm not going to do that." You know what I mean?
Yeah, but-
I couldn't do it.
But driving home, you were like, "Man, he needs to give that to Luke."
100%. And you know what? And he did. And he was thinking that. Cole was thinking that. You know, he was, because he's the one that played it for Luke. And Luke called me up saying, "I heard this song. I'm gonna cut it." And then I get the call going, "Cole wants to be an artist. Let's let him run with it, because I'm not cutting until 6 months down the road. And worst case scenario, it's a win-win situation."
Yeah.
And it blew up.
Yeah, but that jumped out on the highway first or something like
highway,
that.
yeah.
And it got all kinds of airplay.
Yeah.
And then it started selling, and then he got signed.
Then he got
Was it
signed.
something like that?
Yeah,
You know,
it was like top 30 on it went to top 30 on radio before he even had his record deal.
Yeah, and then Warner Brothers jumped in there.
They jumped in.
And then Luke took him on the road, and
Right.
his path, that had to have been a 12 months of just a whirlwind for him.
It was a whirlwind for Cole.
Yeah.
And Cole's a great guy.
So how was that with you watching him kind of going through what you were going through? Because it was, it was a very fast trip for him too.
It was. It made me smile. I enjoyed it. I felt like I was right there with him.
Yeah,
a
that's
little
good.
bit. And there's that part God, I went through that. Mine didn't work out that way, but
But it sounds like he had that support around him.
He did. He had a team around him, and I was, one of them going, Cole, just it's going to fall like it falls. Just keep going, keep going. You got a song. At least you got a song you believe in, and you got a team behind you. And it didn't hurt that Luke, being the star that he was pushing Cole.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody when I got here. So it's like it's great. It's great.
But that's still you cutting through on your own terms,
Right.
Because that kind of happened,
Right.
without the normal way Nashville would do it. Pitch a song, you get a cut.
No
whatever.
record label,
This was you
nothing.
beating the path of the
Right.
road and whatever. And that's the great thing about Nashville is that there are many different paths you can take to
Sure.
kind of get where you need to get.
Sure.
And,
That's true.
Now you also had a Clay Walker big cut.
Yeah. Fall.
That is my favorite Clay Walker song of all time.
Shalacy, I love you.
I love that song.
I
Now,
wrote
that was a
Shalacy,
different-
I wrote that for you. You know that, right?
Thank you. I know this. I mean, the secret's out. Sorry, Brooke. Brooke is his very lovely, gorgeous wife.
Knox Country Podcast Edition.
Some of you know me as a record producer for acts like Jason Aldean and Thomas Rhett. Others know me as the son of rock and roll legend Buddy Knox, Party Doll fame back in 1957. I'm Michael Knox. Welcome to my world. You're listening to Knox Country.
Podcast.
Hey, this is Keith Urban.
What's up, y'all? It's your boys here, Florida Georgia Line.
Hey, this is Little Big Town.
And you're listening to Knox Country.
You've entered Knox Country.
Welcome back to the Knox Country Podcast.
But fall was a different sound for him,
Right.
wasn't it? It's sort of, when I heard it and heard it was Clay Walker, to me it was just so different for him.
It was different. It
But
was different.
it was a comeback for him.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And you know what? When they said he was cutting that song, I didn't hear it for him. I'm like, really? I like the song, but the way Keith Stegall produced that record, I'm like, wow, it works, got it. And then Kimberly Locke, that
Yes,
girl from
American Idol.
American Idol, she cut it. I just remembered that. I don't know whatever happened with that, but she did great.
Yeah.
She was awesome.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Fall was the number one for Clay.
Yeah, for Clay.
Yeah, so that was your second number one? Or was Chillin' It before that?
Chillin' It was after Fall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
what I thought.
yeah. Then I had an Andy Griggs one called
She Thinks She
She
Needs
Thinks
Me.
She Needs Me.
Yeah, but that was
a great song,
big
too.
song.
Yeah, it was.
That was, see, man, a lot of your songs were the slow play.
Right.
But you were coming up as a songwriter during a time in the 90s. It was 14 weeks was a number one, and you're
Yeah.
out of the way. And then right after that, right when your song started coming up, it took 35 weeks to get to number
Oh, no.
one.
Which is great.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
It's great. It's great for that mailbox thing you're talking about.
Exactly.
You know, but now it's kind of getting back to that quicker.
Do you think it is, Michael? You think it's going back there?
Well, it is for the guys I produce.
Oh, look at him.
Oh, good Lord.
I love him. That's why I love Michael.
Jeez.
Freaking love him.
Don't
I'm
encourage him,
teasing
Shane,
with you.
please.
I know. I
do,
want it. Huh?
But you know why it's going to get quicker now?
Why?
Is because kids are finding it too fast somewhere else. So radio can't hang in there for 40 weeks anymore because the kids are done. I mean, kids, listeners, whatever it is these days, they're finding it on socials, they're finding it on streaming, they're finding it other places, and they're done with it a lot quicker.
Right.
So they're moving on to something else. So it's gotta go back to what it was.
That
It's
scares
got to
me
go
too,
to a
little
quicker.
bit. Do you think that? Remember how the country fans were in the '90s,
Yeah, they were nuts.
and they hung with the artists.
Yeah.
Do you think that country fans today are sticking with the country artists?
Well, that's a trick because they're discovering the artist, but they're not discovering a large amount of songs.
Right.
They're hitting one song at a time now.
Yeah.
So that's the trick. We got to make sure our artists are cutting quality more than one song. We got to make sure that they're cutting a bulk of songs that make a fan want to know who they are.
That's true.
And that's probably where we are right now, is that people are too busy looking at the quick one song instead of the bulk of songs. Now, whatever you want to call a record in the future is what it is, but still a fan wants more than one song. A real fan will stick with an artist through a bulk of songs.
Right.
So right now we're stuck with a lot of one-hit wonders, one-hit finds, things like that. So
Yeah.
we got to get through that process, and I think a lot of that's just artist development. Don't sign singers, sign artists.
You think there's a lot of artist development in town?
No, I think there's a lot of singers in town.
I'm with you.
I don't think there's a lot of artists in town.
It's true. That's true.
And they're great singers,
great singers.
singing great songs.
Yes.
From great producers.
Yes.
But we don't have a lot of artists. I mean, my opinion.
Oh no, I 100% agree with you.
But I
get
think
it.
that's changing. I think guys like Luke Combs.
Yeah, I think he's great.
I think
he's an
guys,
artist.
even Kane Browns of the world.
Sure.
Sam Hunts of the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, these guys have pop overtones about what they do, but they're artists.
That's right.
They're artists at what they're doing. You know, so the next generation is definitely trying to make that that
Well, I
push.
think they're just true to who they are.
Yeah.
And their lifestyle, and it's sort of the believability is there.
Right.
With those and creating, whether it's EPs or whatever, that travel, because of the common thread in all of the songs. I think that allows the fan to travel with them, and then they kind of feel like they get that personal,
Sure.
connection to the artist, and they feel like they know them.
Right.
And I think as long as we keep that at the forefront, we'll be fine.
Yeah, you nailed it. They know themselves, and it's the believability. And that's what I forgot to tell you is when the radio guys would look at my album cover, they'd look and they'd go, I don't know who that guy is, but I know who you are.
Yeah.
And it just it made me go, I know, I know. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. So then it's back to that. But guys like real artists, they can brand themselves because they're being true to who they are.
Yeah.
And somebody's giving them that opportunity, and even if without the opportunity, real artists are going to come through and break through anyways.
Well, look at the past few years, man. Let's just name Taylor Swift.
Sure.
Let's name Zach Brown.
Right.
Even Jason Aldean.
Right.
Eric Church.
Right.
Even all the way to the Casey Musgraves.
Sure.
To
Luke.
those kind of artists.
Luke, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean, I was trying to get to those kind of artists. Those guys were from independent worlds.
That's true.
They were all touring bands. They were all guys that couldn't get record deals in the traditional sense.
Right.
They had to come through a different route, and
right.
and that's what started that whole situation happening. And then streaming came about, and then it kind of opened up another door of how to discover an act. So it's
true.
And now we're in the heat of that right now, trying to go, all right, man, do we invest in songs or do we invest in artists? So that's just where this new generation is.
And what do you think? Do you think it's both, Mike?
Well, I don't know if the country music format has enough buyers to fund that. I mean, Justin Bieber can cut a song and get 1 billion plays.
Sure.
Our biggest song is 100 million.
Really?
So you can't fund that. So we have to invest in careers.
Right.
And that's why you see a David Lee Murphy with a 30-year career. That's why you see a Garth Brooks with a 30-year career. That's why you see long careers in our format, because people invest in our lifestyles. In other formats, they might not, maybe in rap they invest in their lifestyle,
Sure.
but, rap and country are very, very similar.
They are.
But they don't invest in the lifestyle of these people. They invest in the song of that person. That's why their songs last 18 months, man. You don't really hear a lot of songs from some of those guys.
Right.
But in country music, you hear a bunch of singles.
That's true.
Before Jason could headline, he had to have 10 number ones.
Wow.
That's not the case in pop, or that's not the case in other formats.
It's amazing. Yeah. I get that.
But that's my 2 cents with that.
No, I think you're right. I think you're dead on right.
We have to invest in artists, or our format's going to kind of go a little gray.
Yeah. We'll keep investing in them because we need them, Mike.
Yeah, that's what we do. All right, now I got to talk about a song that I wished made it to being a single.
What's that?
Was Whiskeyed Up.
I know. It just hurts. It just hurts me.
Just
Mike.
rub it in.
Mike.
Dude, but I love that.
You killed that song. Your production on that song was so stinking good.
I agree.
And he's oh God. Jeez Louise.
No, but
No, he talked about that song
I know.
forever.
Yes.
I've had more people call me, other artists, people not in the music business, people from back home, out west. They'd call me and go, "Hey, man," and I'm not a guy. You know me. I'm not a guy who goes, "Hey, man, I got a Jason Aldean." I don't tell people.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm on to the next thing. I'm trying to try to keep it humble, and I try to just let my writing speak for itself. That's true. But I've had people call me and going, "Man, I got Jason's record, and there's a song on there, Whiskeyed Up." Some of them would say, "Have you heard that song?" Or someone would go, "I didn't know you wrote that. That's my favorite song on the record."
It's streamed like a single.
Stream, yeah.
People discovered it like a single. And if you went to like iTunes, it was always the first one that wasn't a single, being downloaded. It always had that edge that you thought it was fixing to be this, the only thing that held it out from being a single was Jason needed an up tempo for the road.
I get it.
And because he's an up tempo artist.
Absolutely.
But man, that song it will raise its head again.
Thank you, Michael.
If we ever do an album of unreleased singles, things like that, that one's always going to be on the forefront.
Well, thanks,
He's
Michael.
loved. He was.
I know.
Loves that song.
Thank you. Yeah.
Aldine freaked on that song the first time he heard it. Now, who all did you write that with?
That was me and Rhett Akins and Michael Carter.
Yeah, that's good.
We had a ball writing that day. I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
that was my title. I had that title, and of course, I can't repeat a lot of stuff that was said in the room. Especially with Rhett. Have you interviewed him yet?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, you know what I'm talking about. Who I love dearly, one of my old friends, and it was just I can't even talk about it. It was but we'd get in trouble.
Hey guys, it's Shalacy. Check us out on the web at knoxcountry360.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at knoxcountry360. You've had 3 major professions, really, if you think about it.
You know what, Shalacy? I'm what is that saying? I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none.
But I'm so out of bull riding,
She brings up all the positive stuff.
All the positive stuff.
Police officer, and in the music industry, what has been the most dangerous
The music business.
career?
Well, see, I'll make it quick. I grew up in a rodeo family. My dad rode bulls professionally. I was never a ball player, little league stuff. But I went from Little League Rodeo, Little Britches Rodeo, to high school rodeo. Mm-hmm. Straight from high school, I filled my permit in got my card in the PRCA pros. Got injured up real bad over all the years. I started too young. And I knew some of the guys I'd been around that went on to win world championships that are still friends of mine. They're bull riders and rough stock riders. I just knew I was never going to be that good. That's honest. I had talent to get me to a certain level. Beyond that, I didn't have it. But I loved it because I grew up around rodeo and still rope to this day. I team rope now. I don't ride rough stock. I'm too old, but and then from there, I went to LA and I wanted to be in the music business. I'd been writing. I didn't know how. I had a little thing going on in LA with all the honky tonks. I had to live down there, and a buddy of mine said, you ought to apply for the LA Fire Department. I did. They had a hiring freeze. LAPD called me. I went to LAPD, strictly for the money to live in LA, and ended up loving it and respecting the job and the guys that I'd worked around, because it's not what society paints them to be today. It's not. But great guys. I'm sure, if there are bad apples in even how many bad apples we have in the music business, right?
Just 2.
Just 2. But in the cop world, that's the exception, not the rule. Mm-hmm. And gave me an immense respect for it. And I love cops. I have a lot of cops who are friends, and pray for those guys and think about them every day because they got a target on their back. And I went from there to Nashville, and it was just like a stepping stone. And I'm very blessed and I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. But Nashville has probably got to be tougher than being a cop in South Central Los Angeles, and definitely riding bulls. Nashville is mentally will beat you up. It'll chew you up and spit you out. Mm-hmm. That is a fact, right, Michael?
Well, it's a mental game.
It is a total mental game.
Yeah, I mean, because you got a lot of talent here.
Yes.
But it's funny, the ones that survive take the abuse.
That's true. And you do.
No, it's a tough
one. Well, I mean, and you two guys are manly men. You guys are sort of,
he's pretty buff.
Shane, you are like a manly man.
Thank you, Shalacy.
When you say that, it's not manly.
No. Well, because it's just ironic that both of you are in a house full of women.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are very outnumbered. Now, so I'm wondering, you have a beautiful family. Your wife is amazing.
Thank you.
3 young daughters, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you handle, looking at your life and what you've been through and seeing where your future is going with 3 young daughters? Mm. How do you handle being outnumbered? Do you handle it like Michael and cry yourself to sleep in the fetal position every night, or do you just take it? I don't
remember doing that.
And go with it. It's like, do you feel like you're getting payback for anything?
It's 100% payback. 100. So if there's any girls out there that know me from the past, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Maybe God's hearing right now. God, just give me a break. Right?
But now you live.
I'm an open book, Michael.
But now you live on a farm.
I live on a farm.
And if guys treat your daughter like that, there's a lot of places to go. Hey, man, come over here by this tree.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of open space there.
Absolutely. I had Luke Bryan. He lives not too far from me. He lives kind of across the field.
Yeah, you can actually almost throw a baseball.
Yeah, yeah. He told me one day because he's got boys. We were laughing about it. He always teases me, and he goes, I can't do a good impression of Luke, but he goes, buddy, he goes, in about 10 years, the Bryan boys going to be climbing through your windows. And what do you say to that? I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. That's what I would have done, and I got it coming if they do. I do.
And please don't cut them out of the will, Luke.
That's right. That's right.
Because that's okay. I mean, it could be worse out there where you live. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
You know, there's some other cats living out there.
There's some other cats living out there. There's some other ones.
So who all do you live beside out there? It's a funny community, you know.
When I first moved there, nobody was there. George Jones was across the road. Him and Nancy, he was awesome. Behind me, across the river, is David Lee Murphy. Then I got Luke, and then next to my left, and then to my right's Chase Rice, and then down the road around the corner is Lee Bryce.
Isn't that funny, man?
And when I was there, none of those people.
Yeah, everybody just kind of found each other out there.
They found each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, of course, I love them all, but David's got to be my favorite. David Lee Murphy. I love David Lee Murphy. I've been a David Lee Murphy fan. You just like you.
Yes, dude.
And I know Jason is.
David Lee, Dust on a Bottle.
He's a real artist.
Showed me what cool could be.
David is cool.
Now, and you have 2 cuts on his new album, right?
I do. Yeah.
That's how exciting is that?
I'm so excited. It's David Lee Murphy.
I know, and to be on that journey with him.
Just to watch him do it again. And he's so cool. The swagger he's got. He
acts like he planned it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's acting like he's playing like no, man, I knew this was going to happen.
And you know what? And he probably did.
I know.
He probably did, because David is just, there's nobody like him, and I love him.
Yeah, he's one of the rare guys who can just sit down and grab a guitar and play anything, and you go, man, that's cool.
That is really cool.
You know, he's our James Dean.
He totally is. And he's got the swagger.
Yeah.
I mean, when I grow up, I want to be David Lee Murphy.
I think a lot of people do.
They do. What was that shirt? They had a shirt out there that said, what did it say? It said I can't remember. It was like, if you're not happy being yourself or something, you always be David Lee Murphy or something like that. That shirt was floating around. It was hysterical.
Somebody told me they go, David Lee Murphy's y'all Steve Earle, and I said, no, he's our David Lee Murphy.
He's our David Lee Murphy. That's right.
But y'all been friends a while.
Yeah. And I really do think the world of him. If David's one of those guys, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if I never wrote a song with him, if I never got a cut with him, he's one of those guys that I would always love and he would mean something to me. He's that kind of a guy. And on top of that, he's a good husband, and he's a dad to those boys, those 3 boys he has. You watch those boys and his wife with him, his family loves him. And he's just I can't say enough good about David Lee Murphy. I want to be David Lee Murphy. I do.
Well, dude,
I want to be David Lee Murphy.
He's great.
Well, dude, I love you being here. Me and you go back, and I appreciate you spending time with me.
Well, Mike, I love you. I have for a long time. You know that. And I'm proud of you and your stuff, your production.
Well, I appreciate
watched
it, dude.
you come up as a plugger, and you're one of the top producers in this town, and I mean that.
Well, I appreciate it, dude. I love you, man. Thanks.
I love you too, Michael. Thank you.
Knox Country.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Knox Country Podcast. Special thanks go out to co-host Miss Lacey Griffin and producer Donnie Walker. See you next time.
You've entered Knox Country Outtakes.
He just recorded all that.
Yeah, but we won't use none of it. You need something else to put your feet up?
No, I'm good, dude. It's me. Come on, Knoxy.
I heard it was packed, and I heard somebody singing. I was like, That
I know what love is. What's it to you?
You kind of got to be an artist a little bit yourself.
Yeah. Well, the best songwriters are artists.
That's right. Well, look at David Lee Murphy.
Yep.
Great songwriter, great artist.
Man, we've talked too much about him.
I love him. That's right. That's right. You can't say
live on Knox Country 360.
Here we are broadcasting. Yeah, we'll get you and I'll get in so much trouble, dude. We can't say that.
Look at her. Hey, get that.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, welcome to Chicago.
Yeah.
Griffin Country 360.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. I got Shane Miner in the house.
Welcome to the show. Do it again.
Knox Country Podcast Edition.